All right, we are back with our fourth edition of the IWAR merch show, which is pretty much just us showing off stuff like this. The little
Oh,
Scott sent me this, and it's a little Christmas ornament. And then this here was from my first love, who I met through IWA, oddly enough. It's an actual decal because she was part of the World Wrestling Federation fan club as a kid, and so I had that as I think my 40th birthday gift she gave me. So that's my little
that's
fun
pretty
there. So
sweet.
today we're going to talk about Larry's Fitzgerald's Larry Sullivan. Sorry, I got Aaron on my mind. Larry
Yeah,
Sullivan here today, and
it
we're going to
works.
talk about Wrestlemania and getting tickets going, and also some of the merchandise you have. Not this though, and and I'm outside, so hopefully the audio is not too terrible. You have a battle of mice there, right? So you gotta.
Yeah, that I won't go back into that story. They're not in the house. They were in one of the storage things in the garage, and I went in to get my merch. I had to just go into bins to get it out, and I surprised them. They surprised me, and luckily, I only fell backwards onto the hood of my Jeep. Could have been worse. Could have gone right down to the concrete
Did you
floor,
take
but
the proper bump?
I did. I went back. I made sure the arms took the brunt of it, and felt good about myself.
Nice. Well, so my first curiosity is I know this you just went to this past WrestleMania.
Yep,
Day one?
just day one.
Just
Yeah.
day one. So looking at perspective of a fan who wants to go, how did you like what made you decide like I'm going?
So I got back into wrestling in a really big way. I want to say it was like 2018, 2017, 2018. One of the first things I did was join the IWA again for my first run, or my technically my second run, because I was in it when I was really young and had no idea what the hell I was doing. And then started watching it on TV again. A buddy of mine, he works at a gym in Venice, California, where a handful of the WWE wrestlers go occasionally when they're in town. Like Seth and Becky go there, and my friend's a photographer, so he started doing photography for them. So like their photo shoot of them with their baby, my friend Paul did.
Wow.
And so he called me up. This is sort of as I was just getting back into the IWA, but really hadn't started watching again. He called me up and he said, "Hey, do you want to go down to Staples Center? Now it's like crypto arena or whatever. You want to go to Staples Center?" I said, "For what?" He's like, "Monday Night Raw." And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, "No, dude, it's free." He's like, "And it's front row." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll go." And because of his connections, he got us these tickets. And I went for the first time. That was my first live show since I don't even remember how old I was. And I had a blast. And at that point, I was like, then I started watching Raw again, started watching SmackDown, AEW when that came into existence. I started watching that. And then we're in like kind of like the beginning of the pandemic. And so I'm watching even more. I'm doing more IWA. And I remember them advertising WrestleMania was coming to Los Angeles. They had just built SoFi Stadium, and it was going to be this big deal. And then because of the COVID restrictions in LA that had kind of been lifted elsewhere, like Dallas, they canceled it, or they said, well, now we're going to shift it to Dallas, and then the following year we'll do it. So I was all ready to go the first time. And then
Yeah.
it got delayed, and I was like, okay. And then when they announced that WrestleMania was going Hollywood, I was like, you know what? I'm not one of those people who's going to travel from city to city every year for WrestleMania, like that guy in the front row with like the green shirt.
Yeah.
Who's that like? I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I have two kids that I will eventually need to put through college, but it's here in LA. I hadn't gotten to SoFi yet. I hadn't seen a Chargers or Rams game, so it felt like the perfect storm of like, we're going to do this. And I just went online. I went to StubHub and I started looking at tickets, and it was like, it's insane how, I mean, it's crazy. And I knew it would be expensive,
Yeah.
but at one point, if you've ever used StubHub, and Ticketmaster is probably the same way, you click on a section, shows you what's available and what the prices are.
Yeah.
And then if you click on another section but don't unclick, like you start getting like varying prices and it's hard to tell what you clicked on. At one point, out of curiosity, I must have clicked on like the front row, or like the section, like the floor section right near the ring.
Right.
And it was thousands and thousands of dollars. And I was like, well, that's not happening. And then I clicked on a different section further away, and like a price came up for like, call it $300 maybe. And I thought it was like ringside. I thought it was like, so I was like, $300. What's wrong with those seats? Are they like obstructed view? Like, and then I realized like I had to unclick stuff. So we ended up sitting. SoFi Stadium is built into the ground, right? So when you walk up to it from the outside, if you've only ever seen it on like Football Sundays, the aerial view,
Right.
it looks like it's sort of up and then it's sort of a half open, half enclosed roof. But if you walk straight into the arena, you're on level 3, and the entire thing is built down into a bowl.
Okay.
And we got tickets that I would say, if the giant wraparound screens, the televisions weren't working, you could kind of see what was going on in the ring, but you really needed that with the combination of that to enjoy yourself. And luckily, the Cena match, which opened it against Austin Theory, the screens weren't working, and everyone was booing and screaming. And then they got the glitch figured out. But it was amazing. It was incredible. And I knew it would be like a spectacle, but for pro wrestling, this is like, it was the lighting, the stage work that they had done, the way they had turned this football arena into this just, it was like being at like a massive rock concert, and the place was packed.
It looked packed, yeah.
It was absolutely, the only place that they looked like they didn't quite have every seat filled was the stage where they walked out.
Yeah.
Above and behind that, which if you really wanted to pay like as little as possible, you could still see down and get a ticket, but you didn't quite, most of your view might be obstructed. But besides that, it was absolutely packed, and it was amazing. It was a great time.
I always use my friend, his dad was kind of a nefarious character, and he would take a Bruins game for like standing room only, and then they would walk behind the people in the wheelchair section and stand behind them.
Yeah.
It's a good view, but it's like,
I used to do that at Ranger games too. Yeah.
I will say I did that one time. I took my dad to a Bruins game for his Father's Day against the Penguins, who at the time had like Lemieux and John, it was like good game. Our seats were at the end of where the luxury boxes are, so you could see the goalie net, and that's it. So we ended up getting up and like just standing down, like down the way and watching the game. It was fine, but I like, well, that's why the tickets are so cheap. So yeah, and I again mentioned before, I worked for Ace Ticket in Boston, which is kind of like our StubHub / whatever, and just brutal the way it was, the pricing. We would get like Van Halen would come to town, and they would send everybody who worked there to the ticket office at TD Bank Garden with like $200 in cash, because you only had a certain amount you could buy. So cash. We take all the tickets, bring them back to the office, and they would just like, boom, boom, boom. And then we get, the $35 ticket is now $250. Anyways, so I'm glad you got to that. So when you got there.
Well, I was going to say too, the debate was, before I committed to buying and spending what I spent on StubHub, was, all right, do we play the game of let's wait and get closer to the event? Because I bought the tickets in, it was like December or January. Like way out, because I didn't like, I wanted to do it. I didn't want to have anything happen, but at the time I was like, it's kind of far out. I wonder if I waited until March, if I could get a discounted ticket. Right. But it was just like, I just want to make sure I have them and I'm getting to go and see it, because who knows when it'll be back in LA again. And
and those are always, the Hollywood ones have always been really good. And I think of the 2 nights, you went on the better day or better night. From just what I watched the whole thing too.
Night one for sure. That was the other thing too. The reason we did night one is because my kids have sports. Sunday mornings are usually the sports days, and it would have just been a giant pain to go Sunday and then work Monday and all that stuff. So we said Saturday, night one, and it was hands down, as far as I'm concerned, the better night. Yeah. Way better. Is main event, I thought, was much better than the Cody Roman main event on night two.
Yeah, I liked the whole show. I think the Dom Ray match was one of my favorites too. It just was a good show. It was a awesome. Good time. And I had friends that came over to watch it, which hasn't happened in years. So, they kind of like, one of them hadn't watched in a long time. So he was kind of like, oh my God, Trish Stratus, I remember her. And my other friend was like, Trish Stratus, she's still alive? So our group was a mixture of like, whatever. But it was a fun watch. So when you got there,
Right.
did you buy any particular WrestleMania merchandise, or were you just kind of like,
No. So knowing that I was going, my wife got me this, and this was I wore this. This was my Macho Man hoodie. So I had the Macho Man hoodie,
nice?
and I, I was I was shocked when I got there because the WrestleMania, like I was gonna get like the commemorative T-shirt, but
Mhm.
the T-shirt kind of sucked. It said like in giant letters on the back, I was there, and it had WrestleMania with like the movie reel tape, and it just, I don't know, it looked kind of shitty, and I have enough black T-shirts, so I was like, I'm not gonna spend the money on that.
Yeah.
But the people who are not only wearing WWE gear, but were full on dressed head to toe in costume was unbelievable. Like I hadn't seen that before. I've been to an AEW show. I've been to, Raw, SmackDown when they've come to town. But there were people with full on like blonde wigs, like just like patterned tights, real wrestling boots walking around, and like everyone had belts. That was the other thing. Which I don't really get that. Like I have to draw the line somewhere. I have T-shirts and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but like walking around with an actual title, like every other person was walking around with a title.
I've heard someone say, I don't know who it was on Twitter, but they were like, "It's your rule. If you show up with a belt, you have to defend it," which I
Yeah,
like that. But I will say that I almost feel like WrestleMania has become kind of like Comic-Con in a way, in that like that whole like the
yep.
cosplay part of it. Because I saw lots of people in costumes like on Twitter and whatever else, and it's like it makes sense. It's a big once a year event. I don't know if I could. I don't think anybody when I went to AW show here in Boston, there wasn't anybody in costume, if you will. I saw a couple of belts, but
I went to the show at the Forum in 2022. So last June, got COVID for the first and only time. No costumes, a few belts. But this was just, again, because I think it's WrestleMania and people are going to go all out. But it was just like, it was insane. It was,
I do worry about one of my concerns is this that there's gonna be someday you're gonna have insert match here and they're gonna be fighting at ringside and someone's gonna be in the costume and they're gonna think, they get a concussion, they turn around and they belt him and it's like, oh no.
yeah,
I mean, who knows? So I'm curious. I'm always curious about like when it comes to special events and the merch I put together because I always feel it is important to like you said, like it kind of was like, so like didn't buy it. When I went to Boston's AEW show, they had like a shirt that was like, the start of AEW. So I had one of those shirts. But
yeah,
a lot of the time, like when I've been to shows, AEW and WWE, I've always found the lack of merchandise kind of like it's kind of like you would have like the Sheamus, there was Rollins, there was Roman Reigns, some of the main eventer guys, but there wasn't a lot of selection. And I always feel like, well, I know these guys can make their money off shirts somehow, but like you expect bigger selection. But I guess you get what you get. I mean, you can always go online now, I suppose. But I always feel
they
like
also,
someone with money in hand, they're at the event, and they're like, "Oh, my kid wants this."
yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like, unlike AEW, which was a lot of like, guys my age, younger, girlfriends, this was like a very like family friendly environment. And to your point, yeah, you'd think they would do a better job of pushing merch because there are kids there who are going to want to buy stuff. The stuff that was selling like crazy, it's all at SoFi, unless there was a section I didn't see. Instead of having like merch stands inside it was just food, beer, whatever. There were
Yeah.
these big like trailers outside that they opened up the front of and turned into like merch venues.
Oh,
So
okay.
it would be as you walk into the venue,
Yeah.
you can like stop and it's just like a tour bus long of bloodline stuff. All the bloodline stuff was selling. The Sammy stuff was selling really well. A lot of Rey Mysterio stuff. I'm trying to think who else.
No Dom.
By the way, the other thing I love is, and I'm pretty critical about wrestling, and I'm trying to get better at not complaining about stuff I don't like, which is very hard for me to do. The heat that guy gets whenever he tries to speak into the microphone is hilarious.
It is.
So good. I don't remember anyone who people just outright hate as
I
much
think
as that.
the last one that comes close to that was Roman Reigns for a while when he'd go to speak, the fans would just be booing and he would just kind of wait. But the hate he got for that was more because he was the chosen one and the fans were rebelling against
Yeah.
and this is more like just everyone hates him. I love him. It's funny because I remember like 6 months or so I told Scott and I like Dom now, and he's like, oh, and now he's like, it's coming around to it. It's like he's just so good at, and I think it's years of being in the business, and he got comfortable. Like you can see physically, he's just comfortable of being out there, and he's fun to
Well,
watch.
whoever decided to switch him heel, that was a genius move because him as just Ray's son, it was kind of like, okay. And yeah, it took time for him to get better and more comfortable. But even then, still like babyface Dom, I'm sure eventually he's going to go back. But this is so much better.
Oh, this kid can run this for years, and again, like the friends who were not really fans were like, "Wait, that's his son." So what we had done, we had watched as we were waiting. We watched the Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero rivals,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
which made that match so much better. My friend who was casual was like, "Whoa!" He's like, "Do you think he's really his dad?" I'm like, "You know what? There's a picture of Rey when he was his age, and he looks just like him. But otherwise, it'd be like, well, I don't know. They worked us." So yeah, I'm glad. Overall, just when it comes to merch experience, I always think about that. Like as a purchaser, I usually give myself like $100, and I say, okay, that's gonna be food and maybe a shirt if I need it.
Yeah.
I remember one time I went to a Red Sox game in April. Don't ever do that. You don't have to. It's cold. It's always cold. And I went in a t-shirt and I had to buy a $75 Red Sox sweatshirt because I was like freezing. But that's merch they get us. So no major purchases then besides what you brought with you.
No, because it was me and I somehow managed. This was when I was buying tickets. I convinced my wife to go, and my youngest daughter, who is of my two. I have two girls. My oldest literally was like, "There's no way." She's in middle school now, and she's like, "If anyone finds out I was there, I'm like done." So she's like, "I'm not going." Literally, this is the conversation. And my youngest, who's just turned 10, is still like she'll still watch with me occasionally. Like you can tell like I'm about to kind of lose her, but she'll still like if I have Raw on, she'll watch a little bit. She knows who everyone is. So I was like, "Do you want to go?" I was like, "You may not. I don't know. Like, are you still a fan?" She's like, "Yeah, I'll go." And so the three of us went. And so the money we spent, besides the tickets, which, like I said, kind of crazy, but it was a great experience. I'm glad we did it. Food, drinks.
Yep. Parking.
I also by the day before we went, so Friday, I don't know why this skipped my mind, but I was like, where are we going to park? And then I had to go online and buy like a $80 parking pass, which was still like it got you onto the into the main parking area outside of SoFi, but it's still like a 15-minute walk to the main building, and then you're in. So based on what else we spent, I guess 80 was like a drop in the bucket, but it was still like the spending did not stop.
No, it's a thing people only think about. Like, you think we're going to park, like I'll Uber it. Well, there's only competing with other people Ubering at the same time.
We can talk about this whenever you want. The traffic getting there was okay. The traffic leaving was a nightmare because where they built SoFi, it's literally across the street from the LA Forum, where the Lakers and Kings used to play, and now it's like a big concert venue. And then a block and a half across from that, they're building the Clippers' new arena. So this area was not made for three major arenas to be sharing traffic. It took us on a 2-lane street to get out of SoFi, and it was basically the distance of 6 traffic lights. It was an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh.
So if you Ubered, I don't know how you were getting an Uber like after the fact. They did have an Uber where you could go and meet, but like there's thousands of people who are getting in Ubers. Like I don't know how you're supposed to find your driver, and then you're sitting there. So I'm sure Uber charged a pretty penny to get people out of there.
Oh, I that's the thing about going any place really in Boston. Like you're kind of congested, but if you can just get out of that main little drag, you're going to be fine eventually.
Yeah.
But Boston's so congested anyways. Not like it used to be, but it's still bad. So next thing, you have merch there besides WrestleMania merch. Do you any other WrestleMania tidbits you want to share, or did you at least have a vendor out in the boonies where you walk to your car who was like, $5, it says Bloodline?
Yeah, that happened on the way in. I'm trying to remember what they had, but it was off brand. It like had the right logo, or at least like as I was like rushing my family past these people, it looked like it had the right logo, but you could tell something was off, and like they wanted like barely any money for it. There were a lot of those. I'm sure it was worse in other places.
That's
Um, I just say if you can do it and you don't mind spending the money, and part of it I think is also like, are we now doing, is WrestleMania now a 2-night event from here on out for the foreseeable future?
how many years now has it been 2 nights?
Didn't it
Three,
start
four?
during the pandemic
I
when they
want
were in that Thunderdome thing? Or they were, maybe it was before the Thunderdome where they were just in the empty performance center. When Drew beat Brock for the title,
right.
that I think that might have been the first year they started doing it. It takes a little bit of the fun out of it, but I mean, I think based on the amount of money they make, why are they going to stop doing it? I'd say
Yeah.
if it's 2 nights and you've never been before and you want to go and experience it, I would give it a shot. And I would just, as the other thing is though, we did get lucky. We picked the night based on like our family schedule.
You're right.
And then I think being a better night to be there, but they're very slow about how they announce what's happening on what night. So I guess my advice would just be if you don't mind spending the money, and you've never done it before, I think it's worth doing once. I don't know that I'd ever go back. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's like 15 years from now and they're back at SoFi,
Right.
sure. But
What if your daughter's wrestling on the show?
that traffic really threw me for a loop. I don't know.
Sorry, honey, I can't do it.
Yeah,
I got my Blue Line shirt.
I got my Blue Line shirt. I'm fine.
I love terrible vendors. I worked for Ace Ticket, like I said earlier. I was in Boston, and working around the stadium, you would see like off market vendors, and they would have like Big Poppy, but it'd be spelled wrong, or printed like off center,
Yeah,
and they'd be like, 3 for 10, 2 for 5. I'm like, what? Like they're just trying to move merch.
I want 3 of those shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, I want 3 misspelled Poppy shirts. Great. Although now I would love to have a shirt like that, because people are like, what the hell is that? Um, so let's switch to merch now.
All
So
right.
some of the merch you've collected. So what is your prized merch item there about the things in front of you?
I've got so much stuff here that I pulled down. I've got a couple of cool cards. Here's a World Championship Wrestling card, and this was at Meadowlands Arena. I don't know if you guys can.
Ric Flair.
Yeah, so we've got Sting versus Ric Flair for the NWA World Title, Rock and Roll Express versus Doom for the tag belts, Lex Luger versus Mean Mark, aka The Undertaker,
Okay.
for the US title. 6-man tag team, El Gigante, Junkyard Dog, and Paul Orndorff versus Sid Vicious, Arn Anderson, and Barry Windham. Tommy Rich versus Stan Hansen. Dr. X versus Van Vader. Steiners versus Midnight Express for the US tag team titles. Flying Brian Pillman versus Buddy Landel. And the Z-Man, Tom Zink versus Dutch Mantel. This was on Friday, August 24th, 1990.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Forever.
a fun show.
It's a great show when you think about it now. Like, it was packed. This was when they were, I guess they had started to invade or try to get outside of their normal like mid-Atlantic territory. They did Starrcade 87 in Chicago, which didn't go very well, but then they started coming up to New York, New Jersey. And I only made this one card, but I remember them all being pretty packed like this. They just wanted to put as many of their stars in front of the fans as possible. This is kind of cool. I forgot I had this until you asked me if I wanted to do this show, but and hopefully you can see it. It's Captain Lou Albano with the Wild Samoans, Alpha and C. So this is the beginnings of the bloodline.
Right.
And it's pretty sweet. So I need to get this in some sort of a frame.
Is that Lou Albano on the back as Mario?
Oh yeah, this is. I don't know who Luigi is, but this is perfect given how big the Super Mario movie is right now.
Right.
Like, I don't know who that guy is, but that's amazing. I need to get one of those frames that has two glass sides so I can just constantly flip this back and forth. I don't know what I want to display now.
Just hang it from your ceiling so it rotates. So people can
Just rotate. Yeah.
Well, the ceiling fan. Just
like a wind chime.
Yeah.
I've got a ton of the old LJN guys. I'll, like everyone remembers this. They're not in great shape because I actually played with these. So there's we got Piper.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But I've got, this guy.
Oh, Snuka.
They had motel rooms with him.
Someone asked a question on Reddit the other day that if Hogan wasn't the one they went with, who would it have been? Like if Hogan stayed with AWA, and I was talking to a friend, and I said, it would have been Snuka if he stopped killing people.
Yeah. What was I listening to where they were talking? Oh no, I know. There's a great book, and I've read like way too many wrestling books. But it's called Ringmaster. It just came out.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon and the Unmaking of America. And it talks all about like all of the very sketchy, weird shit that Vince has been involved with. And it goes into great depth about Snuka, like when the police showed up and arrested him, and that Vince showed up at the police station with a briefcase, and then not long after left with Snuka. And this is pre the first WrestleMania, but it's pretty dark stuff. This is a good one. We have Bam Bam Bigelow.
Oh, what a teeth. Oh.
Tattoo on his face, the gap between his teeth. Yep.
Wow.
And I've got let's see. Got this guy.
Oh, of course.
Baby.
This
is kind of a cool one. This is Sergeant Slaughter. But this is, so he's got the G.I. Joe logo.
Yeah.
So back when I was collecting G.I. Joes, there was an offer where if you cut out, I forget how many proofs of purchase off of the cardboard the cardboard thing that the G.I. Joe characters came in.
Yeah.
You could send them in and they would send you a Sergeant Slaughter action figure, a G.I. Joe action figure. And they made it, it's not LJN, it's Hasbro, but it's the exact same size and make of the LJN characters. So now you can put Slaughter in the ring with your other guys.
Wow.
Just a couple more. I'll move on. We got Macho Man, Ricky Steamboat.
Nice.
And then I've got a few shirts. I typically tend to go for like slightly weirder ones. This is one of my favorites. I don't know why at a certain point, this was my favorite tag team in the mid 80s in the WWF. It's the Dream Team. Beefcake and Valentine. I rooted for them over the British Bulldogs constantly. You got the Road Warriors Japan Tour 87.
Wow.
Oh, did I lose you for a second?
Oh,
someone called.
I got you.
Got that one. I've got the Jerry Lawler Powder Shot.
Oh, nice.
Which I love. And then this is my favorite, although it's really kind of hard to wear out unless you're going to a wrestling event. Because I wore this and I went to the grocery store and I was going up and down the aisles with the list getting stuff, and a woman just walked by me like in her like 70s and just looked at me and with all seriousness went, "Oh, poor Wahoo." And I had kind of forgot I had it on. I was like, "Oh fuck, now I'm wearing a t-shirt bragging about breaking someone's leg and no one knows who the person is." So now I seem like a psychopath.
One of the things Alex and I talked a lot about was like what t-shirt design and the wearability, in that can you wear your t-shirt to a non-wrestling event and not look, either be ostracized because of it or be like, what the hell are you wearing? Because some of the shirts, like especially DX days, were really inappropriate for outside crowds. Or like the Wahoo shirt, but like I always feel like if you're really smart, you make a shirt that has like an insult or something like that, but it can be beyond wrestling, so it'll be bigger than just that, because that's
like that shirt got a lot of like thumbs up at AEW. because you're there and the fans kind of, at least some of the fans knew what it was referring to. But
Right.
you know, and now there's just, I don't know if you've been following this stuff with the Britt Baker t-shirt,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is another one that's like there's all this debate because it's like, okay, how many people actually know who Britt Baker is? It's not like Steve Austin or The Undertaker. It's Britt
Right.
Baker, and it's a woman with a black eye, and you're wearing that around. What does that say? People who aren't like into wrestling or don't know who Britt Baker is, that could actually end with some bad stuff happening to someone.
Right. I always thought when I first saw that, the first thing I thought was I didn't see what it was attached to, and I looked at it from my phone with my glasses off, and I thought it was a concert shirt. I'm like, oh, that's pretty like a band, and I thought maybe some female singer was making a statement about whatever, you know. And then I looked at my glasses on, was like, oh, and I remember the shirt she had out a couple of years ago where she was all bloody, and kind of a similar
Yeah,
thing. Like I think she was fighting Thunder Rose or whatever.
Thunder
Uh,
Rosa, man.
but again, it brings me to the point of like, out of context, it's a good way to look at it, I guess. Can someone wear that shirt and be like, oh, she's tough? Okay, but I remember she was getting mad. She's like, if it was a guy shirt, you wouldn't say anything.
But that's because you wouldn't, because there's just like I think more often than not, it's unfortunately men doing that to women.
Right.
And so the guy with a black eye, you're assuming it's still a weird shirt to wear if you don't know who the guy is.
I think they should have put something on it like tougher than nails or some kind of catchphrase on it, because then you would have had, oh, okay, it's not just, put a little more context, a spin on it.
Yeah.
Because I think almost anything in life, if you present it right, I was like, I was watching an old South Park and I was like, wow, like, some of the stuff they said back in those days. But then I thought like some of the cartoons from back when I was a kid. I read Secret Wars, the Marvel Comics,
Yeah.
Secret Wars, the original one. And the writing is so bad. It's so like, I mean, just the dialogue, it's childish, but it's also like inappropriate stuff. I'm like, well, different time. So anyways, yeah, but like that those shirts, like the Wahoo's leg, I've always thought about like for like athletes, like if a player broke like Joe Theismann's leg, like LT would wear it.
Yeah.
I broke Theismann's leg.
I broke Theismann's leg. He's walking around.
Like come in the locker room and be like, LT was exceptional. So those are your shirts. Those are all your shirts or just some of them?
Those are all, yeah, those are all of the shirts that I have at the moment. And then I mentioned before we started recording, I've got a pretty insane stack of old magazines. That these aren't all of them, but these are the ones when I moved out to LA and eventually my mom was still in New York. She passed away and I needed to move baseball cards and comic books and everything out here. So I had to kind of pare stuff down. But I've got some kind of cool PWIs. This is from December of '88.
Yep.
The old Horseman.
But fun fact, that picture, everyone's like under 45 in that picture or something like that. It's some ridiculous number. It's like Iron's 30, right? Barry's 28, Flair's 40 something. And I just look at that picture, I'm like, I'm 50. I'm like, oh.
What life on the road does to you, though.
Yeah. Although in college, that was in my my room on the wall framed.
This is a cool one.
Nice.
Ric Flair, Second Chance at Greatness. That's April of '84. Let's see what else we got here. I kept a lot of like Inside Wrestling, like it's like the year in review ones. And then on the back, you've got, and that's why I need to actually open these up and look at like the old ads. But then you've got this for the LJN figures. Sure. Kind of this is a cool cover. The Wrestler.
Nice.
Here's and Precious Paul. A good Dusty.
I don't know if you saw or not. I posted an article on the IWAR page that it's a magazine article or an article about the publication of wrestling magazines and how they were given kind of like carte blanche to write things about wrestlers in character for certain companies.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating.
Right? That was.
What's that?
Didn't Apter do that? Wasn't that his main?
Yeah.
His main yeah.
Yeah, so it's just fascinating where you look at it. Because I remember thinking as a kid, like I should write for these guys. Get Wayne Manor, they get so mad at people, but it was like it was well done. It was well done.
I like this headline: "Grappling ghouls don't answer the door for these Halloween horrors."
I'm gonna give Kamala a treat. I'm sorry. R.I.P. Kamala.
Yeah, I got a few more of these. Here's Valentine versus Flair, the wrestler. That's from August '83. Yeah, I mean it goes on and on and on. Here's a good. All right, this is. I'll make this maybe the last one, but this is a very cool one. This is Ric Flair's startling confession: "I hate being champion."
That's always the best part of those magazines. The cover, the taglines, like
yeah,
there's so many champions. The storylines were like the price of being champion is blood, and it would be some
yeah,
Flair covered in blood, or Dusty covered in blood, or Bruno covered in blood. I just love the over the top, like the one move that could end his career is the one move he needs.
right.
It reminds me of those action movies where it's like he's fighting to forget the past that won't leave him alone. No.
Must watch. Must see what happens next.
Right. Oh no, this was good. This is good. We're on time and everything, but I know you have a whole bunch of stuff there. Unfortunately, you had to take a back bump onto a car, so
it was worth it. It was worth it. Yeah, but actually finding opening up the bin and finding these magazines again, I definitely want to I'm gonna pop open the plastic and dig into them. If for nothing else, I think the ads will be absolutely hilarious. I'm sure there's an IWA join the IWA ad in multiple issues that I have in front of me. Yeah. Which is how I discovered it to begin with.
Oh, it's a fun trip. Especially all the little things where it's like the page full of trinkets where it's like, X-ray glasses and
yeah,
buy him a Rambo knife for $10. What? Yeah, some of the stuff like
I have an old comic book from 1985. It might have been the first comic book I ever bought. And it's on the same page where there's the ad for the X-ray glasses. There's this ad for it's basically there's a wimpy guy who's getting sand kicked in his face by an active guy on the beach, and it's you send away, and apparently they send you methamphetamines or whatever. You can buff yourself up and go back and take him out and steal his girlfriend was basically the conceit of this product. I wonder how many people are still in jail awaiting execution based on that.
I just kicked sand in his face by accident. We were playing volleyball.
He's blind now. You're going to jail.
No, this is good, and I especially like hearing about the Wrestlemania because I always feel that I've talked to some of the guys about doing an event. Let's pick an event and go to it, and check it out. And we don't get around to it, but I was thought, well, pick some event, but who knows? But
I'll say this too: you won't see the matches, but even the tailgating at this thing was pretty impressive. And there's a whole thing on the no tailgating allowed, but people had their pickup trucks. They had grill. I mean, it's like going to a football game, except it's pro wrestling. Yeah. And guys are sitting there in Hulkamania t-shirts with the universal title over their shoulders, and they're flipping dogs on a little hibachi. This is crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but it was fun. I'm glad we did it.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and your merch.
You got it.
I appreciate it. So we'll probably do another one. I'm sure you have enough stuff for another show. Down the line. All right. Well, thank you, Larry. We'll let you go, but good luck this week. I'll say congratulations on the steel cut oats winning the Johnny B Cup. Way to go, sir.
He's on a roll. Let's see if we can keep it going.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. See you later.